Sometimes rude people don't just test our patience. They test our peace, our identity, and our control. They push buttons to see how we react. But what if the real power wasn't in reacting at all? What if understanding why a person is rude gives you control over how you respond? Today isn't about fighting people, it's about mastering your psychology. Because once you understand the mind behind rudeness, you never take it personally again. You stop reacting and start responding with calm confidence. That's when the real power begins. Rudeness often feels personal, but in most cases it has nothing to do with you. It is a reflection of what someone is battling inside their mind. People don't wake up and decide to be rude just for the sake of it. Something in them is either hurting, insecure, threatened, or desperate for control. Psychologists call it displacement when someone projects their frustration, anger, or insecurity onto a safer target. And most of the time, that target is whoever is closest or quieter. That means when you are treated rudely, you are not receiving their truth. You are receiving their internal conflict. Once you understand this psychology, you stop asking, why are they treating me like this? And instead think, what are they going through that makes them behave like this? People who are rude often feel powerless in some area of their life. Maybe they feel unheard, so they raise their voice. Maybe they feel small, so they try to make others feel smaller. Maybe they feel ignored, so they use anger as a way to control attention. Every rude behavior is a loud message from a quiet pain. But the mistake we make is reacting emotionally and believing that the attack is on us. That's why many people lose control. They take the bait and react emotionally instead of responding intelligently. The real power is not improving the rude person wrong. It is in understanding the psychology that makes them act this way. That shifts your focus from reacting to understanding. And once your mind shifts from defense to analysis, you naturally become calmer, more confident, and more in control. Think about a doctor in an emergency room. When a patient arrives screaming, scared, or in pain, the doctor doesn't take it personally. They don't argue. They don't get offended. They read the symptoms. They diagnose the issue. Because the doctor knows something critical, the pain is not about them, so there's no need to react emotionally. The same mindset works in difficult conversations with rude people. When someone attacks your tone, your character, or your decisions, pause and observe instead of defending yourself. You can tell a lot about people when emotions rise. Their emotions reveal what their words try to hide. A rude tone is sometimes a cry for help. An aggressive comment is sometimes a sign of insecurity. A harsh reply often comes from a lack of emotional vocabulary. Some people were never taught how to express feelings in a healthy way, so the only language they know is rudeness. You don't cure their behavior, but you gain power by understanding it. You must also understand that rude people look for reactions. Why? Because reaction gives them a feeling of control. If they can drag you to an argument, they get power. If they can make you angry, they win. Rudeness is often a fishing hook, and your emotional reaction is the fish. The moment you react emotionally, you lose control of the conversation. But when you pause, respond calmly, and maintain steady body language, something powerful happens. Their control disappears. Their strategy fails. Because you can't control another person's tone, but you can always control your response, and control is power. When someone is rude to you, remind yourself they are projecting, not reflecting. They are expressing their pain, not your truth. That's why calm confidence is the best response. Calmness doesn't mean weakness. Calmness means you understand the psychology behind their behavior, and you refuse to let it manipulate your emotions. You don't give them your peace. You don't give them your control. You don't take their words personally. Instead of reacting, you observe, you think. You respond with maturity. At that moment, you stop being a participant and start becoming the psychologist in the room. You read their behavior instead of absorbing it. You study instead of reacting. You choose emotional intelligence over emotional impulse. To really master this, you must become aware of your emotional triggers. Rude people often know how to press the exact button that causes the strongest reaction. Maybe it's disrespect, maybe it's tone, maybe it's how they ignore you. Whatever it is, once they find that button, they push it and you react. But remember this, a button only works when it is exposed. If you learn to protect your emotional triggers, no one can use them against you. When someone attempts to provoke you, notice what emotion rises in your body. Is it anger? Is it shame? Is it frustration? That feeling is your teacher. It is telling you exactly where your power is being taken from you. The more aware you become, the less control they have over you. That's how you turn emotional reaction to emotional intelligence. The key is not to fight the rude person, but to understand them. Understanding creates distance. It protects your peace. It helps you respond rather than react. Rudeness loses its power when you stop taking it personally. You don't let their storm enter your mind. You don't match their tone. You don't try to fix them. You simply refuse to surrender your inner calm. And when you do that consistently, rude people eventually stop choosing you as their target because your peace becomes stronger than their pressure. Let me give you a simple test that will prove this psychology. Think of the last time someone was rude to you. Was that moment really about you, or were they already stressed before speaking to you? Were they carrying emotions that had nothing to do with you? If the answer is even slightly yes, then the truth is clear. You were not the problem. You were simply the surface they chose to release pressure on. Once you understand this psychology, you start controlling conversations instead of being controlled by them. You stop reacting emotionally. You begin responding intelligently. That is the true power behind handling rude people. The power of understanding human psychology. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is control. When someone is rude to you, your instinct might be to defend yourself, explain yourself, or prove them wrong. But sometimes the strongest response is no response at all. Controlled silence is not about ignoring them. It is about protecting your energy. It is about refusing to let their words drag you into a battle that doesn't deserve your presence. Most rude people speak with emotion, not logic. When emotion rises, logic falls. That means the more they talk, the more they expose their own psychology. But the moment you react emotionally, you step into their arena. You start fighting on their terms. That's when you lose control. The power of silence is that it forces the other person to face themselves rather than fight with you. When you stay silent, you give the moment room to breathe. You interrupt their pattern of aggression. You give space to the conversation, and that space creates discomfort for them, but clarity for you, because silence is not empty. Silence is full of information. In silence, you see more, you understand more, you realize their tone, their body language, their choice of words all reveal what they are really feeling. Sometimes the best way to read someone is simply to stop talking. Rude people often speak quickly, but emotionally intelligent people respond slowly. That slow, calm response is what shows control. Silence allows your mind to stay above the situation instead of getting trapped inside it. While they react, you observe. While they argue, you analyze. They try to pull you down emotionally, but your silence keeps you above their chaos. There is a psychological trigger behind this. Rude people rely on reaction to feel powerful. They throw bait through insults, cruel jokes, sudden tone changes, dismissive body language, or passive-aggressive comments, and they wait for you to bite it, because if you react, they win. That reaction gives them validation. It proves they could control your emotions. That is why silence is so powerful. It denies them the reward. When you stay calm and quiet, they start losing steam. They start questioning themselves. They start becoming aware of their own behavior. Silence holds up a mirror. It is not you versus them. It becomes them versus their own actions. You must understand that silence is not passive. It is active. It is intentional. It is chosen. Controlled silence is not retreat. It is redirection. When you pause, you shift control of the moment. You choose when to speak, how to speak, and whether speaking is even necessary. Silence is not about avoiding the problem. It is about refusing to feed it. It is about giving your mind enough space to choose the right response instead of reacting out of impulse. Emotional impulse is what rude people expect. Emotional maturity is what they cannot handle. Your silence is proof that you refuse to be manipulated. It is proof that you value peace over ego, clarity over chaos, but using silence effectively requires confidence. If you stay silent just to avoid conflict, your silence becomes fear. But if you stay silent out of choice, your silence becomes power. The difference is your mindset. You must not see silence as running away, but as staying in control. Controlled silence is sometimes more powerful than the smartest argument because silence cannot be misquoted or twisted. Words can be used against you, but silence keeps your record clean. Silence also protects your reputation. When people argue loudly and emotionally, observers do not respect them. But when someone stays calm and measured, observers notice that too. And respect often goes to the one who stays in control, not the one who speaks the loudest. Here is something important to remember. Silence is not always the final response. It is the first filter. It gives you space to decide if this conversation even deserves your voice. Not every rude comment is worth correcting. Not every person is worth engaging. There is wisdom in choosing which battles deserve your energy. Silent observation lets you gather information before making that decision. Sometimes after your silence, you may choose to speak, but you will speak with clarity, not emotion. You will respond with intelligence, not impulse. And your words will have far more weight because they were not rushed. Controlled silence can also create psychological pressure for the rude person. When you do not react, they begin to feel uncertain. They wonder what you are thinking. They question if they went too far. Their confidence fades because they expected conflict but received calmness. Calmness is uncomfortable for aggressive people. They rely on reaction to fuel their anger. But calm silence leaves their anger unfazed. Think of silence like a vacuum that pulls out their emotional energy instead of giving them more. They might repeat themselves, get louder, or try to provoke you further. But that only reveals their desperation. The more they try to trigger you, the more obvious it becomes that they are not in control. Silence also protects your mental health. Words spoken in anger echo longer in the mind than you realize. A moment of reaction might lead to hours of stress or regret, but silence protects your peace before the damage is done. It creates a boundary that says, I choose not to be affected by this. That boundary builds emotional resilience. It helps you stay neutral. With silence, you train your mind to respond thoughtfully instead of emotionally. You start seeing conversations like a chess game. Every move is intentional. Every pause is strategic. And silence becomes a move that turns the game in your favor. However, the secret to silence is not only in using it, but in combining it with the right body language. If your silence looks weak, it loses power. But if your silence looks confident, upright posture, steady eye contact, controlled breathing, it speaks louder than words. You must understand that communication is not just verbal. Your calm facial expression, relaxed shoulders, and steady tone communicate strength even when you say nothing. Silence paired with strong body language makes people think before they speak to you again. It makes them realize you are not just reacting, you are evaluating. And evaluation is intimidating to people who act emotionally controlled. Silence also helps you learn something priceless: emotional patience. In emotional moments, time feels faster, but silence slows time down. It gives your mind space to think, observe, and decide properly. That skill is rare. It separates emotional adults from emotional children. Rude people often behave like emotional children, quick to react, quick to blame. But emotional adults master the pause. The pause is power. The pause is protection. The pause is clarity. Silence is not empty. It is the moment where strength grows quietly. And once you learn to sit comfortably in silence, rude people lose their ability to control you. Because silence is not just the absence of noise, it is the presence of self-control. Understanding human psychology is like having an invisible shield in every conversation. The moment you understand why people speak the way they do, their words lose power over you. You stop reacting emotionally because you see the deeper truth. Psychology helps you recognize that rude behavior is often driven by insecurity, fear, stress, and lack of emotional intelligence. When people don't know how to express their pain, they express it through anger. When they don't know how to say, "I feel small," they try to make you feel smaller. And when they feel like they are losing control in life, they look for something or someone to control. But when you learn psychology, you stop seeing rude people as enemies. You start seeing them as signals of what they are going through internally. That understanding turns frustration into clarity and clarity into control. When someone is rude, most people take it personally, but the skill is to separate your feelings from their behavior. Psychology teaches you that behavior is communication. Even silence is communication. The tone of voice, body posture, micro expressions, eye movement, all of these are signals telling you more than their words ever could. Rude is not random, it has patterns. For example, when someone suddenly becomes sarcastic, they're usually hiding discomfort. When someone talks over you often, they are scared of losing authority. When someone mocks you in front of others, they are seeking validation from a crowd because alone, they don't feel strong. Every rude behavior is a clue, and once you learn to read the clues, you stop reacting to the surface and start understanding the source. Human psychology also teaches one of the most important principles in communication. People are not always trying to hurt you, they are trying to protect themselves. Ask yourself, what do they gain by being rude? Do they gain attention? Do they gain control? Do they avoid responsibility? Once you understand the motivation, you stop taking their tone personally and start analyzing it. For example, a boss who constantly shouts might not be confident in their leadership. A friend who always criticizes might be afraid of judgment themselves. A stranger who speaks rudely might be overwhelmed by stress in another part of their life. When you understand this, patience becomes easier. Because the moment you realize a person's anger started before you arrived, you stop thinking they created it because of you. Learning psychology also helps you develop a crucial skill: emotional distance. Emotional distance doesn't mean ignoring others, it means observing without being controlled. It means you hear their words, but process them through understanding instead of reacting through emotion. Emotional distance lets you stay calm in heated situations. It lets you choose your words carefully. And most importantly, it keeps your peace safe. You realize you don't have to absorb every emotion that enters the room. You can listen, analyze, and respond intelligently instead of reacting impulsively. The person who stays calm is not the person who is unaware. It is the person who understands more than they reveal. One of the most powerful shifts in psychology is understanding what belongs to you and what doesn't. Their anger does not belong to you. Their sarcasm does not belong to you. Their insecurity does not belong to you. It is not your responsibility to carry someone else's emotional weight. But without psychological awareness, many people carry it anyway. They take responsibility for fixing the rude person. They try to rescue them, change them, or explain reality to them. But psychology teaches you that you don't have to fix people to understand them. You can understand them and still choose to walk away. Emotional intelligence allows you to read the situation and protect your peace at the same time. Understanding psychology also helps you communicate assertively. Assertive communication is when you stand your ground firmly but politely. You don't raise your voice, but you also don't back down. You don't attack, but you also don't apologize for existing. Psychology teaches that assertive people are respected more than aggressive or passive people. Passive people stay silent out of fear. Aggressive people speak loudly out of insecurity. But assertive people speak clearly because they are in control of themselves. They don't ask for respect. They command it quietly through their presence and tone. And once you understand rude people psychologically, it becomes easier to communicate assertively because you stop fearing their reaction. You begin to see their reaction as a predictable pattern you already understand. Another important psychological concept is emotional triggers. Every person has certain words, gestures, or tones that trigger a strong emotional response. Rude people often know how to press those triggers, but psychology helps you identify your own triggers so you can protect them. When you feel a sudden rush of anger or embarrassment, that moment is your teacher. It is showing you where you still feel vulnerable. Instead of reacting, ask yourself, why did that comment affect me? What is the deeper emotion behind it? Is it fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of disrespect? Once you find the real source, you gain power. Because when you know your weaknesses, rude people can no longer use them against you. Awareness creates defense. Psychology also reveals something important about power dynamics. Whoever controls the emotional pace of the conversation controls the direction of the conversation. Rude people move fast. They want to push you into an emotional reaction. But when you move slowly, when you pause, breathe, observe, and respond with calm, you silently take control. Because psychological strength often looks like patience. The person who is slow to react is usually the person who thinks the longest. And the person who thinks the longest usually makes the smartest decisions. That is why emotional control is one of the highest forms of intelligence. Understanding psychology also helps protect your self-worth. When someone is rude, it's easy to question your value. But psychology reminds you that another person's tone does not define your identity. Their words may enter your ears, but they don't have to enter your heart. When you understand why people act the way they do, you stop letting their behavior rewrite your story. You stop allowing their opinion to change how you see yourself. Self-worth is not given by others, it is guarded by understanding. Psychology becomes your shield and clarity becomes your armor. In the end, psychology helps you master one simple truth. Most people are not against you, they are just for themselves. Their reactions are based on their experience, their fears, and their limitations. If you absorb their behavior, you suffer. But if you understand it, you gain control, and once you gain control, rude people stop affecting you the way they used to. They no longer shake your peace. They no longer decide your emotions. Because psychology gives you the clearest power of all, the ability to see the person beneath the behavior. And when you understand the person, the behavior no longer has power over you.